Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Nico.
And I'm TK.
And that makes this X's for Comics. We are so stoked. It's the hat, it's the shirt, it gives you everything you gotta know. We are here to talk about Batman Deadpool, not to be confused with Deadpool Batman. That naming convention is still the funnest thing ever. But just want to put out there, we got both books. We're here to talk about, I got these little windows. I got the Nightwing Laura cover, and I believe you grabbed a cover today too.
I did. I don't have mine with me, but I got Wanda and Zatanna.
Oh, this one? Oh, yeah, you did.
That's the one. I was torn though, dude. I did see Emma and gorgeous. That was not at my store.
Yeah, I went to the Geekery in Matawan, New Jersey, and they had like every cover, and they were like, buy them to your heart's content. It was a real, you can go snick yourself moment. It was so great.
I was very tempted by Emma and Celine, Emma and Catwoman, or Selena, not Celine. I was also tempted. God, there was one other one I really liked, but I did notice Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel, which was a cool looking one. Some great covers on this.
So, okay, we're here to talk about this special thing, right? It was Deadpool Batman originally, which had Dead of Night featuring Deadpool Batman, the Gun and the Sword Cap and Wonder Woman, Catch with Jeff and Crypto, Red and the Green with Daredevil, Green Arrow, like my cover for the original. Right? And then we had Rocket Raccoon has a Green Lantern ring now, the surprise breakout star of the book. Showdown, which technically was a comic. And then Enter Logo, right? Showdown was Old Man Logan and Batman The Dark Knight Returns. The Rocket Raccoon Green Lantern story was Rocket and Hal. Then the Enter Logo was Logan and Lobo hybridized, because sometimes you can take a parody of hyperviolence so far that he actually becomes a parody of hyperviolence and loops back around to hyperviolence. Good for us. Then they dropped the 2 Marvel Unlimited DC Infinite specials. We had Thor Shazam featuring Thor and Shazam. That happened. And then we had a great story. Just that one didn't have a title. Everything else got a cute title. And then we had Planning Ahead with Flash and Fantastic Four. And we're here now. I want to say, just to start, my average grade for everything that came before this is somewhere around like a B+ on average. I didn't love Logo, I didn't love Showdown, but I felt so good about the majority of the first volume, and my grades for this second one not very different.
I think it's funny, I actually liked Logo. I didn't really care. I liked that they did an amalgam thing.
Oh yeah.
And for me, that's another one that makes a sort of sense that nobody wants to acknowledge. Because Lobo is the Wolverine attempt that failed. Yeah. He's DC's attempt to seem edgy and badass and give you a rough day. And he just didn't, he didn't really take off. He never really became a thing. But he feels so much more compatible to me with Wolverine than Batman does as Darkclaw. So I don't know. I like the idea. And so ultimately, similar grade. Like everything in there got a pretty high grade from me. And we both loved both of the digital comics, the Thor Shazam and Flash Fantastic Four, very high grades there. And so going into this, I had high expectations. I was grading on a curve.
Oh, me too. And once again, I was overwhelmingly pleased. I'll admit I didn't love the last 2 stories quite as much as I'd hoped, and we'll get into it, but it's also because we just did this big amalgam read, right? We read every crossover these 2 companies ever did. Anytime Marvel and DC crossed over, we talked about it, including all of the amalgam hybrids, which can't believe how that came in useful today. Oh my God. It's like Grant is listening to the show right now. Hey, Grant, we love you. We're so glad you're checking it out. We think you're amazing. This book had everything I was looking for. I feel like Stefan. This book had everything. This book had everything I was looking for from a crossover, and even some things I wasn't. I just want to put out there that we got Cosmic Kiss Caper with Batman and Deadpool by Morrison, Mora, Sanchez, and Klein. We got to start us off, and so we thought this one was spinning out of the events of JLA Avengers in a slightly different way. I and you both kind of thought it was going to be that egg from the end of.
Yeah.
But it was the makeout session.
Yeah,
Who would have guessed?
It was the kind of shadow dance making of the egg, which actually that sort of was my second guess, was that it would have something to do with Eternity, and I believe the character's name is Kismet.
I would believe it.
Okay, I assumed it was Perpetua. Because Eternity and Perpetuity, but no, that was not correct. I had to Google around, and I believe from my understanding it's Kismet, who has another name that I am sort of forgetting right now. But yeah, I mean, it's funny. Morrison said he is pulling on a thread from JLA Avengers, and he wasn't not, but I would call it less of a thread and more of a beautiful woven tapestry.
Oh yeah, so delicate.
Those the Eternity and Kismet moments are not really a thing that's referenced in the book directly.
No, it's like on the side. It's just happening.
It's a piece of artwork that's sort of depicting this idea of the two universes coming together in a very sexy way, in a very romantic way.
Kind of like Prometheus with a cave drawing, you know what I mean?
But nobody in the book is like, and what is happening is our two universes are boning. And certainly like Kronos isn't like, what I'm trying to do is make these two universes have sex so I can create another one. So it was interesting to me, not in any kind of bad way, no marks down or anything, but that was, I mean, I love how Grant Morrison's mind works. I just love what he will pick up on. And it's, I mean, we're starting with the biggest thing, but like, I'm about to say that 1,000 times as we talk about everything in the issue that he does this with.
I personally just want to sing, put your hand in the hand of the man who still the water. Like, who knew that my weird childhood being raised in the Catholic Church with a bunch of with hymns would pay off? But here we go. I know these songs. So I just everything about this. One of the things that was so cool was Morrison spoke for fandom at large with some of this right away. Obviously we all know who Slade Wilson Deathstroke is because we're, people who have watched these shows, read these comics. He's not that obscure. He's not, let's say, the writer, but he is, he's Deathstroke, man. He's Slade Wilson. So Batman's like, are you Slade Wilson? And Deadpool's like, no. And Batman's like, you sure you're not related to him? And Deadpool's like, I'm not even from this reality. What's wrong with you? And in that way, Deadpool seemed conscious of his own fourth wall breaking antics in a way that was kind of like, Batman, why aren't you used to this? And so there was an element to the way Morrison wrote in and out of this idea of lunacy that spoke for the fandom, that channeled the fandom so carefully with detective work that's based on questions. And I thought that Morrison really deftly handled what was frankly a difficult thing to do, make these two characters vibe.
Right off the bat, it became a thing where I thought to myself, Morrison is the person who should be writing Deadpool right now, because it is one of very few viewpoints that we haven't had, which is breaking the fourth wall as psychedelia. We've had it as just like a little trick, sort of piggybacking off of characters like She-Hulk, who had done it when Deadpool was just sort of aimless and had nothing to give because he was basically a murdering rapist who was trying to be, who was in a competition with DC to see who could have the most badass characters, the deadliest assassins. And once all of the young boys who were 10 who thought that was cool outgrew that, what's the point of this character? So we start to move into comedy, and unfortunately, as the second wave of millennials starts to grow up and be into comics, that translates into a lot of chimichanga, stupid 13-year-old boy poop joke humor, which is in some ways for me fine, because some of it, for as stupid as it was actually well written by guys like Brian Posehn and put the character on the map and made him an accessible thing to people. But we got really lost in him being able to break the fourth wall, and we got really lost in that humor, and everybody was writing him so silly it's not fun, or they're like, you know, doing things like in X-Force where they're desperately trying to rehab him and make him somewhat usable in one book while being pulled in so many directions in another book. We get all the way to my favorite, Alyssa Wong, who makes it no longer a joke that Deadpool wants to fuck everything. It becomes, he's a pansexual man. He's funny and he's a pansexual man. So he is constantly, you know, it's not a joke that he would like, that he sometimes imagines himself as Jean Grey to Cyclops. That's just, he just really wants to do that. The joke is that he wants Cyclops, not that it's funny to be gay or like to want gay things. And Alyssa Wong just wrote so much great Deadpool stuff, really elevated the humor. And I've missed having a unique writer's perspective like that. And I haven't really been thinking about Deadpool's humor a lot. You know, of course, there's a whole other conversation about Ryan Reynolds, but we get this book and immediately I remember that, like, how I got into fourth wall breaking in comics was the Invisibles. And the most important fourth wall breaker for me in comics is Grant Morrison. And I don't know. I should have thought about that ahead of time. I really wasn't. I was just thinking he's a great writer and he gets comics, so he'll write a great Deadpool. I'm not worried about it. But I forgot that Deadpool's gimmick is one of Morrison's best lanes. And just immediately the thing took off for me in new ways that I wasn't even expecting.
And for me, I think a lot of that does come out of the fact that when we're talking about these characters, we're talking about monoliths of comic standard. You know, even if the Ryan Reynolds of it is whatever. It literally paid the bills and kept the building going at Marvel. So I'm thrilled about it.
Yeah.
But he is the best selling rated R movie at the time. And Batman is the best selling comic. And so we have this opportunity where these two monoliths are coming together. And it's by a person who is in and of themselves a monolith of the industry. And the fourth wall breaking nature of what Morrison does is so frequently self-aware meta recontextualization of what's on the page by a bigger idea. And so I never think of it as Deadpool's fourth wall breaking. It's a much more like cerebral identity than turning to the audience going, "Can you believe that?" with a cigar in your mouth. Mm-hmm. And so like the deeper thing that I really appreciated from Morrison bringing the Morrisonian elements to this is that when you're talking about characters that everybody knows, you have to find a way to talk about them in a way that everybody cares about. And when you're trying to say blue and you say blue to someone, their job is to imagine blue in their head. When you say Deadpool to someone, yeah, you get a lot of chimichanga, but you also get a lot of, oh, that's that hyper violent dude. Yeah, katanas. When you say Batman, you get a lot of people who say he's a bad dad, and I challenge them to read a Bat book from the last 10 years and then say he's a bad dad. The pop cultureification of these characters make it so hard for somebody like Morrison, who Morrison is so good at acknowledging other people's work, but also gets very in that Morrisonian lane where they sort of say, but I don't really care about the other stuff. I'm going to reimagine it, but like I care, because they do. And so the big shining things for me here were, yes, we got the unbelievable return of Morrison writing Cassandra Nova. Who could have dreamt of that? Who could have dreamt of Morrison making references to the Court of Owls? Who could have had those and then Dark Claw, and then just Dark Claw, Amalgam's Dark Claw, just out of the Ra's al Ghul acid. We're talking full on Dark Claw, and it was just wild because so infrequently do you have characters say, oh, these are the numbers of the universe. Does everybody get with the numbering system? And Morrison was just like, I might not like Alan Moore, but I sure like his numbering system. And so Morrison bringing that Morrisonian fourth wall breaking, but in a way that's, like almost like Target Walmart friendly. It's so unique because this was Morrison taking that delectable E is for extinction, it's not what you think it's gonna be, and elevating it to a post-meta context that we all got. We didn't need to be spoken down to, and Morrison chose not to speak down to us. And so that this was an opportunity to talk about the writer, unreal. This was an opportunity to talk about Game Master, unreal. You know, we had so many things here that when, you know, you've got Cassandra Nova with her fingers in your brain, and you got Damian in the background, you could say this is too much Morrison in any given space, but it was given the space it needed to be flourished. It had the opportunity to become Cookies, and that was what was incredible.
I also like I think it's tough to imagine now because we're mostly oversaturated with great writers doing stuff, bouncing from one thing to the next. I go so hard on him, but Al Ewing is a great example. Al Ewing is basically working at Marvel constantly for the last decade or so. And Al Ewing's greatest hits is just kind of Al Ewing doing more Al Ewing. And that's true of like a lot of the like Hickman would be the same thing. If Hickman kind of pulled from his original Shield comic, from some of the best stuff from Time Runs Out, from his Fantastic Four, like all the stuff he's done, if he did that anytime soon, it would just be Hickman doing more Hickman, because he does that in most of his runs anyway. He finds some way to sort of pull some references to the stuff he's doing. On the other side of things, you have like a Claremont who the waters are a little bit sour, because even though he was an amazing writer for so many years and we all revere him, his idea for where the comics should have gone really veered very far away from where they went. And so when he tries to write, it's not, sometimes it feels a little, we always want to honor him, but I'm never necessarily champing at the bit for his return to comics. I always will sing his praises, but when he does a Gambit, you know, Interquel series, I'm never like, oh, Claremont, like finally we're seeing him do his thing. Like, sure, it's just whatever. Morrison is one of very few people who I can think of. Him coming on this book is a victory lap that he should do, that he should write. And he writes it like, don't you want to see my greatest hits? Don't you want to see Morrison do Morrison for the big two, like Morrison did for the big two, that made you all so happy? And it's not self-aggrandizing. It's just true. He did create Cassandra Nova. She is awesome. We all love new X-Men. And, you know, she's great in Deadpool, or in Deadpool and Wolverine. And so for a lot of people, that reference is going to be a thing, and it's going to be eyes on pages that see something they recognize, even if they aren't big Morrison fans, and even if they weren't big fans of new X-Men. You know, something like The Writer, a little more obscure, but again, that's a victory lap for if you've been with Morrison since Animal Man. It's a love letter to comics, the way that he pulled Dark Claw out of this, because he absolutely did not have to. You know, he was referencing JLA Avengers, but he didn't have to reference Amalgam. Nobody else has. So their ability to give you what you want, and like knowing when that is, you need your mind blown, I need to introduce you to concepts you've never seen before, and art. I need you to consume art, and I need to challenge you, and I need to make it uncomfortable, and I need to teach you a lesson. Amazing. Did that a billion times and taught me many lessons and showed me art. But he also showed up to a lot of stuff saying, I need to entertain you. I'm here to entertain you today. And it's, you know, this entertainment is not made of the highest minded ideal and platonic forms of artwork. This is made out of stuff that's really fucking cool that you're going to like. You're just going to enjoy this and you're going to have fun. And the fact that he can do both and put both into an issue of Big Two Comics is, I mean, it's why I can't stop talking about the person.
And, you know, it's the careful use of page work and page space. You know, I remember reading one time, I forget even who it was, but they said, I don't ever turn in scripts to Marvel with more than 4 panels on a page because I'm going to be told no, right? Yeah. The editorial is going to say no. And so then you have a lot of these sort of like giant splash pages with Cassandra Nova, and you've got just some panel insets on the next page. But one of the things that makes this such a mastery is that you also get these pages where Dark Claw isn't a splash. Dark Claw is just an element. And it's all mirrored in the fact that the variant cover of this has Batman, Crisis Supergirling, Deadpool, but the book has Deadpool, Crisis Supergirling, Batman. And that, you know, I feel like when you think about the things that Morrison does to blow your mind, right? Like Damian's at the top of the list. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, Damian is a reference to an existing work, and I've read it all, and I'm here for it, right? But it's that thing of Len Wein didn't create Wolverine. Len Wein created Wolverine, but Claremont created Wolverine, right? Like, let's all just remember that when you write the pilot of the show and you never come back again, you probably didn't have that much impact on the overall series as much as you did the tone of the first season. And so, like, Damian being in this is a mind blow because like you just don't think of that as something that would be a staple to Batman. Like you'd think a Dick Grayson would show up. Sure.
Except if you're me, because I don't have your experience. Most of my Batman has Damian. I was happy to see him. And I love that Morrison was writing him again. But like I've been reading Batman mostly just for the last year. So I do expect to see Damian.
You know, and so one of the things that I also really enjoy about this book that worked for me really well was that it's not just that it was a silly romp and a magical ride. It was sort of the ways that the title was aware of itself. Hawk Owl was so fun and lighthearted. It kept it really humorous and it kept it really easy. On the whole, I gave this story an A-. I had a really good time with it. I just thought this was a spectacular issue, and I would have been happy to buy it on its own.
Yeah, I gave it an A. I loved it so much. It made me so happy. I've missed Morrison so much. I mean, I still, you know, I read his fiction. If you are craving Morrison and, you know, are not necessarily in the comics mood, his book Luda is absolutely fantastic. Great audiobook too, by the way. You know, he's writing some great fiction in his Substack, some really great Cthulhu Mythos right now. I've missed him in comics. I mean, he is the reason I'm an adult comic book reader. And, you know, since he's been gone, I've been getting into DC. And so getting to read some of his DC was really, really magical to me. Having him write Cassandra Nova again was really magical. Seeing the writer was really cool. Just, you know, so much great stuff. Just great. Morrison referencing Morrison is just so cool. And it really was just a celebration of, you know, this even goes beyond the celebration of Marvel and DC and the idea that the big two are one thing. They are the big two. It was a celebration of just what fun comics can be. And yeah, I don't know. It was really great. I'm just so stoked about it. And I think it's a perfect reflection and companion to Zdarsky.
In the Zdarsky's Batman?
Well, in the Deadpool Batman.
Oh, that was Wells.
Well, sorry, not Zdarsky. Thank you, Wells. Thank you.
The thing about that is even like with the writer being Grant Morrison and a Grant Morrison stand-in, you know, I think a lot of people might have seen that and thought, oh, it's Charles Xavier, because they don't go out of their way to make it clear who it is. And it's someone that, you know, Cassandra Nova is like, oh. And so I feel like there's a lot of context to unpack here. And, you know, I do just want to point out that you weren't crazy off, because Chip Zdarsky had one of our favorite stories from the first title with the gun and the sword featuring Cap and Wonder Woman. And that was Zdarsky, Terry Dodson, Rachel Dodson. And I want to make sure I credit the letterer, VC's Joe Carmagna. So you're not like pulling people out of nowhere. But speaking of pulling people out of nowhere, I do not remember the last time outside of a West Wing script I saw this many people credited with writing something. This was some brain trust. This was like when the Spidey brain trust was writing every page of Brand New Day. No, they didn't. It was mostly Dan Slott. So a magician walks into a universe with John Constantine and Doctor Strange by Scott Snyder. James Tynion IV, by the way, he really does do that tiny onion thing. I really appreciate it because it's what I hear every time. Joshua Williamson, who was like a DC mainstay, so hardcore that he might as well be Scott Snyder or James Tynion. Hayden Sherman, Mike Spicer, and once again, I feel so bad, but letterers at DC don't really come over to Marvel, so I always have to look at their names. Frank Satevakovic, please, sir, come on our show. We will gladly. We've had letterers on the show before.
I think it's Satevakovic.
Yeah, yes, like that. And I very excited to have somebody able to pronounce a name. Okay, I do in fact very proudly, and will show anytime anybody wants. I do in fact own every appearance of John Constantine pre-New 52 and nearly every appearance post-New 52. Physical books, paper, some of them in better condition than other. Let me tell you how much money it cost me at one point to get that entire Paul Jenkins run before it was reprinted. My God. Do I own that much Doctor Strange? No. Is there 3 times as much Doctor Strange? Yes. Do I care? Not so much. Doctor Strange is something that's often done to me. Like it's a little bit more like I get an STD test because I have to, because it's the responsible thing to do. That's sort of the same way I buy Doctor Strange titles. You know what I mean? I do it because it's important and it's responsible and it's the thing to do. But let me tell you, I do not look forward to it. So when I picked this up, I picked it up figuring I would experience the moment and be fine with it. But then this was like the shittiest John you could depict. Like, not the wrongest. The worst version of him that is still totally accurate and within my fandom. And I was like, God, and he's going to get over on Doctor Strange because Doctor Strange is Benedict Cumberbatch. And, you know, John Constantine is always sexy and cool and bisexual. So, like, everybody's going to just do that he dated Stanley Wayne Manor and it's going to be a thing again. That Doctor Strange was like, no, you're obviously trying to put me to sleep. No, you're obviously trying to use magic on me. No, you're obviously trying to steal from me. Like, the realism of these two characters, it was not the best Doctor Strange. It was a real Doctor Strange. It was kind of the worst, best version of, again, positive on this iteration. Worst, best version of John. I was expecting to not like this story at all, but, you know, I really did walk away feeling like that last couple of pages really gave it a strong B vibe, and not like to jump to a grade, just like this was for me. Really, I guess this was expected and it played out the way I would want it to, but in a way that it excited me and surprised me that I wasn't expecting and I was excited about.
I hear that. It's a lot of writers for, I guess I don't understand why.
Like a Beyonce song.
Yeah, and that's another one where sometimes I'm like, I don't understand what each person did. This isn't a very long story.
But they're each irreplaceable.
Completely. To the left. This was lovely, but like it wasn't super long. It was not super complicated. It didn't have more than one location. So, you know, because sometimes you're like, oh, part 1 was written by this guy. And even if that's 2 pages, that's his 2 pages.
Great catch.
But this is one very short meeting at the Sanctum. So I you know, were they all credited because they were all hanging out and they pitched this idea and did, I don't know. And it's not in any way a bad thing. It just gave me pause because this is a story that's a lot more about, this is kind of My Dinner with Andre, My Sorcery with John. Like it's just the two of them just sitting around talking about like, what really is, what are we doing here? What is magic between our two universes? And yeah, there's a little bit of like, ooh, John, you sneaky snake from Doctor Strange. But like at the end of the day, not much happens. And they just sort of both agree that it's wild being the sort of most powerful terrestrial magic user in your orbit, on your planet. John at one point refers to himself as the Sorcerer Supreme, which is, it's great, and probably true. Like if the if the universe is
title, he's the Magus, and I just said it.
Well, and that was something, that's always one of those things. We were talking on the podcast where we were covering JLA and Avengers. I was talking about sort of the creative surrender of that book, where it didn't need to say, I'm the Sorcerer Supreme and I'm the Magus, so we're each other's same thing. Like, here's the exact comparison. And so to have John Constantine just say, I'm the Sorcerer Supreme, and not say, here's what it is in my universe, both works, and then sort of leaves you also saying, but like, why didn't they, for all the Marvel readers who don't know John, why didn't they have him say, I'm not the Sorcerer Supreme, but in my universe, we have the Magus, which is essentially the same thing. Mostly because I think that would probably be bad writing, and there's probably not a great way to say it where it's just not just info dumping.
I mean, like anything that's sort of like, as a guy who speaks magic languages, I would think you would understand that every language has its own way of saying it. Yeah, Sorcerer Supreme, but in my world, I'm the master of bad luck magic. I'm the Magus con job. Like, there are ways.
Maybe we needed a fourth writer. I think maybe we needed a fourth writer. Yeah,
hello.
It's this one. This is the one. This is the writer we needed. We could have made this happen. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't. And again, like we're pitching it now, so clearly it could. But they didn't get there. They did this other thing, which was cute and really, and not condescendingly cute. Like I liked that they related. And yeah, I mean, it was John at his shittiest, but with this very Steven, my thing is always Steven should be shittier.
Yes.
Steven is shittier, and then always he as a character, which could be fine if the writer always loves him too much and wants to, and I think, publishing an editorial does too, and doesn't want to leave him dirty at the end of a run. But so what always happens is he goes, well, this is why I had to do it. And then inevitably everybody goes, oh, those demons are scary. You did have to do it. And nobody, like, then Clea shows up and their partners, and Clea's never like, I know magic too, and you're a dick sometimes, which would make more sense. Or Ilyana, like other people who are Sorcerer Supreme and high-end people showing up and being like, you're a white man who was a doctor who has never been challenged on anything in your life by anything other than like Mordo and Dormammu, who are essentially white men.
The only other white person we let it get away with this much Asian appropriation is Robin.
Blammo. So, if I could continue with this line of play, John would make Doctor Strange worse. John would make Doctor Strange reveal, he wouldn't make him worse. He would make him reveal who he truly is, which is not much better of a guy than John Constantine. I did the random spread of Ghost Rider and Swamp Thing was very cool. I sort of wondered if that story got pitched, was rejected, and they were like, we'll get it in here come hell or high water. But I would have liked that story. I would have read that. I would have been super into that. Yeah, I don't know. This was great. Them sort of fusing into one magical being to talk it out some more.
With hugs.
With love.
Not like weird, look at.
No, they weren't battling it out. They came together in a very affectionate way, which led to, Doctor Strange basically saying, you're like this for a reason. Like, you're like this because it's what has to be done, which, I mean, John also had just some great ideas about, like, I'm not a hero, I'm a fixer. Which I love. Like, there was just a lot of great stuff was said. Again, it was very philosophical. It was very My Dinner with Andre. Like, it was just talking about the philosophies of magic between these two publishing companies that do it ever so slightly differently. And again, it brought me back to JLA Avengers, where Cap is like, this universe is horrible. They worship their superheroes, and Superman comes over here and is like, these people are insanely racist and miserable. It's sometimes interesting to discuss how sort of just slightly different takes on the characters in the 60s spread them really differently in some interesting narrative ways, even though they are all just the same thing.
And, I love what you're pointing out about the idea that there is so much love in this story, because one of the things that, so the smartest person I know, Tori, series contributor Tori, we were talking about how Tartuffe is like such an important, when you're talking about like restoration comedy, everybody gets so excited. Like everybody's like, look at my erection when it comes to Shakespeare. But the minute you get to Moliere, everybody's sort of like, I'm going to sit in the shadows and no one should look at me at the orgy. And like, there's like a shame. And like, one of the things that I thought was so exciting was that where this book sort of did say there's a cerebral quality that kind of dominates the way we talk about these two characters experiencing the world. To bring it back to Morrison for a moment, Morrison celebrated the silliness of how both Deadpool and Batman experience the world in kind of the same way. Batman's whole job is to investigate because he is the biggest hero in the world. Deadpool's job is to investigate because no one's going to tell him anything. And so he has to look it all up on his own. And in the same way, John and Doctor Strange operate from the same chair of power, but where that chair sits in what room is totally different universe to universe. And there was, one of the things I love is that, we all have our sound bites. We all have our, the things that play in our head forever, over and over again, right? And one of the things that plays in my head, that plays in your head, is your love of pointing out that Marvel has always bragged about being the world outside your window. And John says to Steven, you can sit here looking at the world outside your window as much as you want. And the excitement of feeling like these characters, once again, meta understood the fandom experience, was a level of elevating engagement. I don't think even the stories that I gave C's to, and it's unfortunate that I came for the Frank Miller story, because anybody who knows me knows that Daredevil by Frank Miller is my literal favorite single comic series of all time. It is the most important thing that ever happened to me. I was born in the months of Born Again, and I like to think that I did it the first time fine enough. No one in here did less than the greatest job in the world. And I'm so proud of getting to be a fan at this time. But these three writers, as a contrast to Grant Morrison, the amount of page sorcery going on here is enough to make the printer explode with sparkles. It is something crazy.
Yeah, it really was fantastic. And it was the perfect example of if you told me we were getting more of this tomorrow, I would be so happy. But the fact that it is one gorgeous slice of pie, and, for the most part, we're not really going to be remaking it again. I will just always remember this one magical experience.
It is definitely a B+ from me, dog. I'm not gonna Kara anybody here. Nobody was pitchy. I even, like I said, didn't love this iteration of John. My John is somewhere closer to Mike Carey than it is to Azzarello, even though, Az wrote, 100 bullets, and so much of my personality comes from, Az's work. This was maybe even a little bit closer to a Delano John, and my John probably operates closer to the Ennis side of things than it does that Delano delineation. So I did have problems with it, but they were, I know this works. You can just think the Mona Lisa is ugly, and there's nothing wrong with that, because that's art. And I thought this had ugly parts, but I think that they should be celebrated. All right, I will literally not hear a bad word about Sticks and Snicks. This is my story of the year, maybe my story of the decade. This was, Tom Taylor's Nightwing comes close to my love of Frank Miller's Daredevil. This story, Tom Taylor, Bruno Redondo, Adriano Lucas, and Wes Abbott. Wes Abbott, who, by the way, has been kicking ass on lettering since the X-Men in the 90s. This guy has been lettering the shit out of every book you love since before you knew how to read. Okay? This story, I'm a big fan of, as a Cuban and Greek man, I'm a really big fan of just kind of commenting on generational trauma, right? Because it's all there. But, and I'm Irish too, so Angela's ashes and whatnot. But this didn't celebrate generational trauma. This celebrated generational heritage. as someone who doesn't feel held down by the fact that my parents are spectacular and I just want to live a life that celebrates the quality of love they taught me. Oh my God, this was healing. This was beautiful. And I got Barbara and I will not hear a bad word about this story. This story was just the best book for me. And that last page, the whole episode could have been this 8 pages for me, and I just wouldn't care because Tom Taylor wrote something that was chicken soup for my soul on a cold, sick day. I just can't. I'm gonna stop because I can't.
First off, big up to Wes Abbott, whose name I first saw all the way back in 2004, 2005, when he was the artist on the 2 issues of the Bag Online Adventures. Coheed came for his first attempt at making a comic of Second Stage Turbine Blade.
Wow, what a good time for them for flashbacks. Hey, be used. Oh no, that's my chem. Gotta go.
We always knew there was a story to it, and they always promised a comic was coming, and I forget what it was. It was not a Kickstarter because we didn't have Kickstarter back then, but I remember I paid for it in advance. And yeah, it was art, not letters, art by Wes Abbott. And eventually they went back and redid the whole thing, and fully told the Second Stage Turbine Blade story. But the original thing was to do these 2 issues and then build from there, and it never took off. But we will always have those 2 issues by Wes Abbott. So, big shout out to Wes Abbott. I mean, we talked about this yesterday. I basically said, that this was what I wanted. Like, this was the story, and this is what I thought it was going to be, and this is what I wanted. The idea that Dick and Laura would be best friends. This is not a romantic story. Like, they have no sexual chemistry. They have
talk about sewers.
Yeah, they have best friend chemistry. They are meant to hang out all day long. They are meant to be each other's bros. They are meant to, I mean, like, this is the one that I'm like, I am very sad that this will not be an ongoing, like that I would base the entire connection of the Marvel and DC universes forever on the fact that these 2 just need to be hanging out and working together. It's so crazy too, because Laura has not existed for most of Dick's history.
And that was why I was shocked about Damien. So I totally get where you were like, Damien, fresh idea. No, totally the thing. But like, I'm like, Laura.
Well, it's not even that
he's
totally the thing.
Like
it's more that I was just
years.
like, it's so funny that for some people, like, people come to this forgetting that there was a time before, like, I
was saying he's a fresh idea. You're the one who's like, no, he's like a thing now. And I'm like, oh, is he?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's been a minute that he's been around, I guess, but
minute.
Yeah. And yeah, same with Laura. It has now been a while that she's been here, but even still, I mean, Dick's been around for so long that and it's why, even in that context, it's like Jubilee was not around as, I mean, I guess she was with Tim, but like, when you think about who they've combined the Robins with, and it's really funny. Just Laura didn't even exist in the 90s. She was just not even a concept yet.
It was Evolution, and then it was NYX by Middleton and Quesada, and then it was Claremont and Davis's Uncanny 450, and then it was New X-Men Academy X turned New X-Men by Kyle Yost, and I'm so sorry, incredible artist who worked on that book.
Craig.
It is so what?
Craig.
Oh yeah, Craig Kyle was the art.
Kyle, Chris Yost.
Yeah, but there was an artist too. And I don't remember, but like I feel terrible about that. But like it's one of those things. You're so right. The time period and the placement you're showing, so correct.
Well, and it's wild too that like Dick had been Nightwing already. It wasn't just like Dick was around and Robin like
25 years.
Yeah. So he had already been. So it's just, I don't know. It's really, it was wild. But then we're also to the point now where Laura has been around so long and has so much history that she does have a sister. She does have a little sister. We created a whole new character. Cheers to the Peanut Gallery for some references. Thank you, KEVO. Laura has
one sister. Like her other sister,
Yeah.
is now Kimura is now a villain, or not Kimura? Bologna. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bologna. A different villain is running around in another title against Elektra. Speaking of like major characters.
Yep. So it's very funny to think about how we got to this point, but yeah, I mean, I couldn't picture a better two characters to be together. And like, this is what's so crazy is I really don't see the appeal of Darkclaw. I do not see the appeal of putting Wolverine and Batman together. I know, and I see the appeal. Don't worry, I see the appeal. But
Batman is just two Wolverines facing each other. No, Wolverine is just two Batmans facing each other.
Yeah, no, that I know too. I get the idea of DC's most popular character and Marvel's most popular character and the most badass characters being fused. I don't find it the most compelling that exists. But Batfam and the Howlets / Logans, yeah, without a doubt. Almost like don't ever have the dads speak, like have them have quick phone calls to each other being like, all our kids are great because they're together, let's continue never talking to each other because we're not compatible. But what we have done is somehow to create, and I love that, I love the idea that like two people that to me I don't see as being super compatible, I don't see as being, I don't know that it would have to be a great writer. It might really have to be Tom Taylor or Grant Morrison. Like it would have to be a really special writer who convinced me that Bruce and Logan had stuff to talk about and wouldn't just be gruff at each other and unpleasant. It would be the worst improv. Like both people are trying to say no to each other before anybody actually even attempts to make a joke.
It's Bruce playing chess against himself while Logan drinks reading Bukowski. It's like and they're both in the same room, looking at the same fireplace, but it's very independent activity.
And I love that idea as like a splash image in a comic that is about Batfam.
Splash, it's not a book, right?
Right. But I want a Batfam and Logan fam book because Akihiro being in this mix too would really be special.
Him and Cassandra,
or him and Damian, even just the biological sons who just cannot figure out what their foothold is in the world of their dad, but who want to be good, who want to make something of themselves in the world. And there's just so much here, but at the core, when you talk about Batfam, you really do talk about the fact that Dick is the next in line. If Bruce is gone, Dick is dad, and everybody.
Well, it's not Azrael.
Exactly. And at this point, Laura is Wolverine. If Logan is not Wolverine, Laura is, when Logan is Wolverine, Laura is Wolverine. But if Logan is not in the picture, Laura is the Wolverine that you go to. She is mom. She is the boss. It's not Akihiro. It's not, again, it's not the heir. It's not the biological son. He's a mess. He is a demon. He is a sexual deviant. It's my favorite kind, but he's not the one in charge. It's Laura. These are the two that have inherited
deviants
everything.
And then anti-celestial deviants. I just want to point out, like, one of the things that you're touching on is actually the quality of transcendent responsibility.
Yeah.
Because I do believe that at the end of the day, what Wolverine and Batman share is an inability to express avuncular love because they have to express fatherly love. They don't know how to be removed from the idea of the hero, so they don't know how to be removed from the idea of the real life guidance post. They don't know how not to be the dad. But Laura is ready to be the aunt, and at the same time, Dick is ready to be the uncle. Your point about Akihiro, I was thinking that he and Cassandra would get along really well because, murder machines raised in horrible situations. But your point about him offering emotional support to Damian is so significant because of the avuncular role he plays to Gabby. And so there's a quality because, like, I do think that Barbara has a motherly role, but in the same way that I think Kitty has a motherly role.
Yeah.
I think that there are so many deep parallels for the Bat and Howlett families You're so correct. And, the book points out the ones that I think you need to point out to get the mimetic value. I was nobody, and then I was raised in a mansion because of my dad, uncle. There's the parts that are tied into, oh, my brother's an assassin. Oh, my sister. There are so many fun things.
Yeah.
But one of the things that these two characters do not share, Dick is sociable to the point where it psychologically breaks him. It's very hard for Dick to have interiority because he feels like he needs to suspend the quality of interiority to perpetuate the notion that Bruce created for him. But Laura lacks exteriority and only lives in the interior. And so she really is always projecting a fake identity because who she is inside is unable to suspend. And that's why she is it's like chicken with 25. And there's this level where Laura is so surface because she doesn't know how to hide things, except when she's being a spy. And Dick is always hiding everything. Dick doesn't know how to deal with his own feelings. And that's the whole point of the Nightwing run by Tom Taylor. Dick can't figure out how to deal with his real feelings. And at the same time, Laura not knowing how to not be all of her feelings at once is also the point of Tom Taylor's Wolverine run. So the idea that these two characters are parallel in a yin-yang, so sorry, not the twins, a yin-yang situation is a dynamic value that is kind of what you've been talking about a lot, at least for me, this episode, where you don't need to be the one for one. You just need to complement beautifully, like peanut butter and jelly. I don't think that there is a peanut butter fruit that we squish into jelly, but I do think that legume gives us the greatest gift.
It's a beautiful metaphor.
Thank you. I'm a beautiful man.
It's true. You really are. Yeah. I mean, I think we just love this book. I also, Barbara and Gabby just sitting together, because this is a family. These are two families, and now it's one family together. It was just great. And again, yeah, there's a very weird thing happening with Gabby. What book is she in right now?
Oh no, it's this. It's going to be Wolverines or something, or it's going to be with
the thing that we read it because we talked about it, and we read a little bit of it, and it's X-23. It's whatever the Laura book is right now. And I forget is it Erica Schultz writing it? It's always Erica Schultz.
No, it's Erica Schultz. Isn't Erica Schultz moving to Daredevil, and Stephanie Phillips is getting this title?
No, Erica Schultz is not doing Daredevil. I think Stephanie Williams is doing, or Stephanie is doing the new Daredevil. But anyway,
Tanner is writing Daredevil.
We just read a little bit of a Laura story where she's like, oh yeah, Gabby's in Europe, and Gabby's 14. What is Gabby doing in Europe on her own? And she gets captured and they have to go get her. And I'm just nobody, who's this child's legal guardian? I get that she is a Wolverine clone, and so technically is fine in the world on her own, but the idea that she has no parent or anything is very distressing to me and very sad. The fact that even Laura is I'm not super worried. I'm not worried enough to know where she is right now and make sure she's okay. And
X-23 is by Erica Schultz.
Thank you.
And Stephanie Phillips is getting Daredevil.
Yeah. Okay. And so it was just really nice to have a moment where an older woman figure who is not Laura, who has her own unique relationship to Gabby, and clearly they're fine. They love each other. But it was so nice just to see Barbara, as you said, being kind of a mother figure, being a big sister, being, just sitting and having Chinese food with her. Because
did she have to be sitting?
Because, their people are broing out. And I don't know, it was just great. And then, of course, having the pets in the mix too. You're never gonna convince me that's a bad thing.
Dog is a very basic pet for a superhero. Oh my God, Gabby is oh my God. When you think about real people that and then I'm
sorry for saying you were mundane, Harley.
Oh my God. It was literally like sometimes series contributor Jonah says the most absolutely out of pocket, honest responses. That is Gabby.
But yeah, this was such a wonderful story. And like I said, if they really wanted to combine the Marvel and DC universes, to me, this is the fulcrum point. These are the two.
I love this story. I'm trying not to just talk about it as much as I talk about.
Well, I could go another 40 minutes easy.
Truly, yeah. I mean, the last page was perhaps my favorite page of a comic since Elektra scaled the White Mountain. I was changed. I feel like even if it's not my parents, if it's the incredible heroes I have in comics, the incredible heroes I have in songwriting, the incredible heroes I have in drag who have all taken the time to get to know me and talk to me, I feel like I stand in their shadow some days. And this reminded me that the best story in the world is about those characters, even when they feel like they stand in the shadows. And I'm going to stand a little bit prouder because of this book. I mean, Tom Taylor is every bit the legend of comics that Chris Claremont is. He's just so new comparatively that we forget that that's how it works. Batman is older than Dick Grayson, and it's the same kind of thing. So I'm so grateful to this story. It could have been the whole book for me, and I would have paid $7.99 for it. Wow, this really was one of my favorite things I've ever read in my life.
Yep.
Okay. I feel really bad because I don't love the last two quite as much. So I'm going to rely on you to love them more. You are Florence and the Machine. This is the end of Lungs. You've got the love.
This is not fair to me.
Oh, but I don't have the love. I'm an ugly hate machine. I am the first 9 Inch Nails record. So Harley and Hulk's Amazing Saturday, starring Harley Quinn and Hulk. Mariko Tamaki, Amanda Connor, Tamara Bonvillain, and Dave Sharp. Not enough all-women books in this. And even then, Dave Sharp did not mean to misgender you. And Ariana Mar would have been amazing on this, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, given that, like, no women are just anywhere else in this, like,
yeah, true.
You know, Rachel Dodson is with Terry Dodson as they always are together in Deadpool Batman, but then I really don't think we have there's no other. Oh no, we have a Kelly Thompson. That's true. But it's a little.
Kelly can be a boy's name, so you know.
It's a little frustrating sometimes the way that you'll see these things with Marvel and DC, and it'll be a compilation story. It'll be like, but don't worry, there's women, but they're always together. There's never just a woman, especially artists. There's never a woman artist on a male written book where it's like that just because she was the best one for the job. And so that's a little silly, but
it's literally just Pia Guerrera on Why the Last Man and nothing else.
Yeah. Which is just unfortunate. But yeah, this is I think we have the same feeling about this one. There's nothing wrong with it. Given what we just said about that Morrison story, even the Constantine and Doctor Strange story, and then Nightwing and Laura, it just feels this is very cute and very silly and very stupid. And there's a lot. If you love Harley Quinn, the animated show, you can see how the idea of absurdist, not dark, edgy Harley humor, like truly absurd Harley humor, plus the Hulk, who is a Hulk, who is, you know, unless he's played for, like, he can easily be played for humor. You can see how this could be a great time. And you might even be able to make the argument that after what we just did with the last 3 really big stories, some comic relief is in order. Just curatorially, this is not the best place for this. This story in and of itself could have made a fantastic Infinity comic. It could have been on either Marvel or DC's platform. It's very lighthearted. It does nothing at all. Harley is a creature that can't stop speaking and being silly. Hulk is an immovable object that rarely speaks and is a straight man to silly because he speaks monosyllabically. Harley does cartoonish pranks and pulls things out of hammer space. Hulk can survive those. Sure, all of that is a thing. I just don't know that it's right for here.
I'm going to take us back to 2001, and I'm going to tag in series producer KEVO. One of the things that KEVO and I have always joked about sharing, by the way, I love your Superman shirt, sir. Okay, so would you please explain the Nicole Kidman VMAs Oscar bit?
This is a very personal bit to me because it was the point at which I, as a young man, first realized how ludicrous award ceremonies are. Moulin Rouge. Most of us fags know it. It has its dramatic moments. It has its comedic moments. For the MTV Movie Awards, for her Best Actress nomination, they chose to use the clip where she's confronting Harold Ziegler and saying that she's leaving the show. And dramatic, beautiful moment. And for the Oscars, the clip they use is the one where she is trying to distract the Duke in the elephant room and acting like a fucking lunatic and making trilling noises and jumping on things. These clips should have been flipped. It blew my mind as a high school student that the MTV Movie Awards used the actual dramatic clip from the film, and the Oscars used genuinely probably her silliest moment in the entire 2-hour movie.
I completely agree with that assessment. And not only do I agree with that assessment, I think it applies here. If you had switched this scene out with the Thor Shazam scene, brilliant. I would have been obsessed with this as an online download. But the idea that this was being portrayed as the thing that I should spend raw money on, I am sorry. They don't even make pennies anymore. So money is starting to be weird. And I did not think that this really, it didn't not belong here because it's beautiful art. It's clever writing. It's very fun. But what it lacks is the gravitas of the other stories. And so it felt really out of place. This was just a duck in a sea full of buffalo. It just felt like, what are you doing here? You're going to get trampled.
That's just your 5 cents.
Yeah, and that's because they still make nickels, and a buffalo nickel at that. Stop it! Oh my God, KEVO, you could be in this book, and I would still put this on Marvel Online.
Yeah, I mean, or another compilation. Who knows what else they're doing? Like, you said you don't want to say this doesn't belong here. It just doesn't belong here. That's the only problem with it. It's not that it's bad writing. It's not that it's a bad idea. It's not that it's not funny or fun. All of those things are true, and that should be part of the stories that we tell with this crossover series, with these books. This one just doesn't belong in this book. Like I said, it's a curatorial issue. And that's just kind of all there is to it. It is a very, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. If you read Al Ewing's similarly short, very humorous Green Lantern Rocket Raccoon story that comes after a bunch of very intense, much more like, what is the fabric of the DC Marvel Universe crossover happening here? You can see that it's a good follow-up. It just makes sense. And I can't quite pinpoint for you everything about that. Maybe one day we'll sit and do like a full discussion and talk about just that. But there's a quality to that story where it makes sense where it is. Even though it is a humorous story, it's lighthearted. It is not meant to have the same gravitas as the other two. I think it is meant to cool things down a little bit when they've been a little bit intense. This one is clearly, the idea is that it will do the same thing. The story that it is just doesn't quite fit the tone of the book and the other companion stories. Even the next one, which we're about to talk about, that I know wasn't a favorite of yours, also wasn't a favorite of mine, but I think I enjoyed a little bit more. All these stories make sense in the book. Unfortunately, this Harley Quinn one just doesn't in this book. Great story. I hope it gets its due somewhere at some point, or like just Mariko Tamaki working with these characters does, because I like it all. And just not quite for here.
Yeah, I give this one a C, and it's not like a a sea of rage. It's like a sea of, yeah, you know, like, just to use a thing we bring up all the time, you know, there's got to be a C Tori Amos album, because you've got so many S's, so many A's, and we're only doing this out of A, B, C, D, E. Giving this a C, I'm just saying that I felt like it kind of did the average. This could have been a Deadpool Hulk story. This could have been a Harley Batman story, a Harley Bane story. This could have been just about anything. Hot dogs that bite you doesn't make me want a hot dog real bad. Funny story, I have not had a hot dog since I'm 20, and I am 607. So, you know, just deal with that. Just not my book. But what I will say, I want to just say to start, New Friends in Old Places featuring Static and Ms. Marvel by G. Willow Wilson, Dennis Cowan, Klaus Janson, personal all-time hero, Klaus Janson. Just like, let's start with that. Francesco Segala and Steve Wands. My reality on this is, if I had never read the books that came before this, if I'd never read Batman Hulk, if I'd never read Batman Spider-Man, Batman Daredevil, Batman Punisher, Batman Spider-Man, oh geez, Batman Daredevil, oh geez, if I had never read any of those, I would say the quality of an introduction is absolutely fine. But at a certain point, even when it is the greatest thing you've ever seen, Liz Taylor drunkenly introducing Gladiator is still Liz Taylor drunkenly introducing Gladiator. And G. Willow Wilson, Dennis Cowan, and Klaus Janson, three masters of their craft, doing the most theme song job on introducing these characters. And theme songs, the things that stick with you forever. I am not being rude. I am not saying this is bad. I did not get Ms. Marvel's personality here. I did not get Static's personality here. And for anybody that says it was 8 pages, calm down. I got it from a couple of others. And you know what? I got Lobo's personality from 4 pages, and I didn't like those 4 pages. And I didn't like Logo. God, one letter. Everybody, calm down. So the thing that this story left me with was an already fulfilled promise. The thing that made it special was that it was characters of color, that it was a character who celebrates being Muslim as part of who they are, not just as like a footnote on the Wikipedia. That was beautiful. But G. Willow Wilson, Dennis Cowan, and Klaus Janson are so much more talented than 4 to 8 pages. I just felt like this title undersold what this story could be.
I think that's a really fair critique. I don't really have anything to argue against. I think I agree with that, and I thought it was. One thing that I really hear that you're saying is, like, even with the short story that it was, they could have figured out how to do more with it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I didn't pick up on that at the time, and I think it's because I know too much about Ms. Marvel, and at this point now, because of this work, a little bit more about Static so that I can fill in the blanks myself. And so I just, for me, what I said to Nico was, this was an awesome intro to a story that then needed to be another 4 to 8 pages. And so the reason why it gets a lower grade for me is because it does not read like, here's a complete story. It reads like, oh, I really enjoyed this, but I would need the rest of it to call it a story that I read in a comic. Instead, what I got was, to me, what felt like a really compelling intro. Gorgeous art. Everybody looks really cool. And where you're not wrong about the fact that there's not actually much said or done. So they had in the pages that they had, they could have just done things differently and introduced these characters a little bit more and shown more personality. I appreciated the minimalism, but I'm seeing what the other edge of that sword is, which is if you go so minimal when it's maybe not the time to be minimal, you have wasted your opportunity to tell the story of your characters. And it's funny because I don't really think G. Willow Wilson is a writer that I go to for minimalism and storytelling. So interesting that she chose that here. Yeah, I mean, like, this is not a bad 4 pages. It's just not a story.
And that's even where, you know, I teach high school students. I literally teach people Ms. Marvel and Static Sage. So perhaps I'm a little too close to this situation, but I teach 16-year-olds that say, if you, a person older than 12, still say 6'7", you should go into a corner and wait for death. And like, no 16-year-old I have ever met is going to say, I'm going to add you to the group chat. That's not like a thing. And so part of what winds up happening is this has a little bit of a quality of an older person talking about youth from the moment that they understood youth, not talking about youth from when they were a child, because that is certainly not the case for any of these creators. But they're talking about it from a perspective that maybe is a little older. Like, I'm never going to say that my 16-year-old students love Billie Eilish, because they don't. They think Billie Eilish is an old person. And that's just sort of reality. And it isn't that this was ever not a good story. It didn't accomplish the goals of giving me a young person's perspective for 2 young people. Dick and Laura are old for their age. Harley really should be like 34. She's just always drawn like she's 19. Damien is an assassinating monster. Everybody just let it go. But like, this, for all of the things that I loved about it, was not more in touch with youth than anything going on in X-Men right now, where, you know, Jed McKay and Gail Simone are writing 90s kids. I mean, it is Love Hewitt on Love Songs singing 90s kids levels of, these are the youths. And so I loved that this even says old places, because it's like telling us this is meant to be a story about not right now, kind of, sort of, in a way. But the other side of that is then it doesn't fulfill a function that isn't fulfilled by any of these other stories or any of the stories we mentioned previously. So this is going to be a litmus test for me in a lot of ways about what we're going to get from Superman Spider-Man and Spider-Man Superman, and how that current is going to flow, because these are 2 such spectacular characters who are written with great aplomb. They are written with such understanding of who these characters are. But sometimes you can be so close to the character that you don't explore the character quite enough. You know, we went to Drag Race Christmas this past weekend. Sorry, Drag Queen Christmas. God, every time. And on the way home, my hot older boyfriend said, let's listen to some Thanksgiving trap. And so I said, okay, car, play Thanksgiving trap. And we found the world's most on the nose record. Stuffing. Stuffing is the thing that you eat between turkey. Everybody knows that stuffing is funny. And like, it was 11 tracks of ridiculous. One song was like, Thanksgiving football. Like, it was so ridiculous. It felt like it was maybe talking to 10-year-olds in a way that was talking to 8-year-olds. I certainly don't think that this was trying to appeal to exclusively a teen crowd, but this had the vibes of a little bit closer to 40 and a little bit closer to 10 than it did to the ages of Static and Ms. Marvel. And that is not a failing of the creators. It's a failing of the editorial curation to create a story that facilitated that. I would never want these creators to lose out on that story. But I did feel like you were trying to shoehorn in the young people. And, you know, it's a cover of The Kids in America by the Jonas Brothers. You're not the kids of the future. Calm down.
I mean, and I think it's also okay we talk so much in comics about underrepresented groups as characters, who writes them and why. You know, I know a lot of people have loved Murewa Ayodele's run on Storm, and having a black person write Storm at all is kind of a get at Marvel, which is insane to say. But a black woman still isn't writing Storm. The black women still aren't getting enough time in the room at Marvel. And it's funny that this is happening at a time when a black woman, Eve Ewing, is writing the flagship story, one of the flagship teams in Exceptional X-Men. And that's great. Wonderful. But this could be an era where actually 2 whole black women could be in the writer's room at the same time writing 2 separate books. Minority experiences and minority writers aren't just a box to be checked. And I know a lot of black people, including black women, are really happy with Murewa Ayodele's run on Storm. So I'm not trying to speak for anybody here, but you know, there are a lot of times where who we're getting as writers of queer characters is questionable. You know, that we're not seeing a diversity of queer voices in Marvel Comics. And similarly, we often don't get young. Who would have been really cool to see writing this is Aman Vellani.
Oh man, what a great catch. Aman Vellani,
who also, by the way, though, is it's getting too old. Like, she's, when you're talking about like your students and like people who appear too old to them, even she might be too old.
I agree. Aman Vellani represents that sort of thing that Marvel and DC are kind of always afraid to do because it's untested. Don't get me wrong. I love Titans, but Ryan Potter Snapchat, questionable. But like the reality is you can refine that by putting them with a more experienced writer. I personally, I'm not here to say anything because, you know, G. Willow Wilson, a Muslim woman, is here to represent her culture in a beautiful way. And thank you so much for doing that. We are so grateful that you shared your experience. Vida Ayala is a non-binary person of color who is out here representing biculturality and expressing unique ideas, and I feel would have made this book, between their DC work and their Marvel work, so much stronger. And where was Vida Ayala? Where was that voice? Where were people who could have maybe brought something that was a little more counterculture and a little bit less? G. Willow Wilson has kind of told us how cool cultural interpretations can be. Like, G. Willow Wilson is a Claremont, so like it's maybe a little bit too standard by virtue of being there. And I am not saying that Wilson or Cowan or Jansen don't belong here. I'm saying, yes, give them the Ms. Marvel story, but don't frame it as the youth story.
Yeah, exactly. And then don't give them the story because let a young person write it. Because that is a part of representation too, is ageist representation. It's been over 10 years that Miss Marvel has been a character, and G. Willow Wilson was fully an adult when she, well into adulthood when she wrote that character. She's older than we are. So she's well into adulthood when she wrote that character. It's now more than 10 years later. She's even further into adulthood. And then all of which is fine and great, but there is a recent graduate, a 22-year-old, there's an intern working at Marvel who's trying to work their way up, who is going to be just even a little bit more in tune with the experiences of a young person today.
There's a non-binary person from Sarah Lawrence who is out here ready to write everything you need.
There to go. And this is 4 pages, man. Give it to him. Not that I don't love G. Willow Wilson. Not that I wouldn't be really happy to see another. Like you said, this is a Claremont. I'm happy to see her on the flagship character that she helped create, that she made a thing. So important, so beautiful. Love those victory laps. Love Morrison writing the writer again all of these years later. Love a victory lap. But this was also Static's story. This was also the story of, the youth of Marvel coming together, and Marvel and DC coming together. And what does that mean? And giving that to a young person, also maybe a person of color. G. Willow Wilson, absolutely love her. She is white. And both of the characters in the story are not white. You too, me too. It's okay.
I mean, I'm Cuban and I am so white. Like yeah. I am like a Carnival Cruise, not like Celia Cruz.
And so, there was a person of color who is in their mid-20s who was ready to tell this story, for whom it could have been their big break. Imagine giving one person the opportunity to share the stage with the likes of Tom Taylor and Grant Morrison in a story that is just, again, it's not going to be the most consequential thing you've ever seen written, but it is going to give a little bit of a boost and a voice to a young writer, but then 2 young characters. So, just unfortunate that we decided not to go there, that we're so risk averse that we don't try those things. But not a bad story, though it maybe a bit incomplete. Still love G. Willow Wilson, love Miss Marvel, love Static, and just, excited for now going into Spider-Man and Superman.
It's one of the things that made this such an incredible experience with you. I had gone into this whole project thinking that everything would be hidden gold. I was 1000% Skinner Sweet heading toward the Wild West. And it turned out that no, not everything I did would be gold, and not everything I bit would give me fruit. And it was frustrating because when I said to you, TK, I'm sure that MC2 is worth exploring, I didn't. I was, probably really high and really drunk a lot of that year and was like, let's do it. And, we wound up having an incredible time that helped me understand what I felt about comics and how I felt about my own zeitgeist within the comic sphere. And then I would go back and read other things and was like, let's not do Earth X today. Because it was not the same revelation. It wound up being something that was fundament to the reimagining of the Marvel Universe in the era of Bendis, who, by the way, of course, is coming back. Where is Bendis in this? Not being like, oh, what's that Bendis? But talking about somebody who can say Avengers versus Legion in a story like this. Where's Bendis? Talking about somebody who can say Spider-Man, Superman. Where was Bendis? And I don't necessarily want him here. I do, because I do care about his thoughts, even if I think he maybe is no longer the spotlight creator. But what I've always wondered about Marvel DC as a contrasting identity is, how do these characters help me to understand each other better? I don't want to see them versus each other. I want to see them strengthen each other with what I learn from one another. When I look at my mother's family tree and I look at my father's family tree, I don't think to myself, ooh, if my grandfathers fought, who would win? I think to myself, how am I made better by these 2 men? When I think about my grandmother and my nana, I don't think to myself, ooh, I want to see one of them punch each other to death, like Celebrity Deathmatch. I think, That's two women who both made mashed potatoes very differently. How do my mashed potatoes taste? And like, that's what I want from DC and Marvel when they work together. How do these two things that are disparate come together in a way that is beautiful? And it's a little frustrating that the fundamental identity of this whole project, this is issue 42, God, I gotta go. This is episode 42, and it's the end of the Amalgam project. We are, of course, relaunching next week with some classic X-Men. It's gonna be so hot, guys. X-Men 360, I'm sorry, Uncanny 360, X-Men 80. I can't wait. But I thought that this whole project would be discovering a record that influenced everyone you knew and you never realized it. I thought everything was going to be I Don't Want to Fall in Love by Jane Child. And, you know, it turns out not everything was that level of 10 key changes in a row. And I think what's amazing is it feels like the creators felt that way too. And whether it was, you know, Busick and Perez, Tom Smith and Starkings reimagining what a crossover was in JLA Avengers, which frankly, for my money, 4 issues that were the best thing we covered in this whole project. Or it was these, you know, 4 to 6 short stories per volume in the 2 independently released digital stories. That really is the thing that made this incredible. The 2003 and the 2025. Now, everybody who knows me knows that I think that, as I've already said on this show, that the best stories ever released were in the 70s and 80s. But there is something so palpable about an entire generation of creators being on the same page as me. I feel like Macaulay Culkin and my friends are books. I feel like I am the page master at this moment, and we started this not knowing that the world would be responding not to what we're doing, but the identity of what we're doing. And I'm saying goodbye to the Marvel vs. DC era with a full heart, not like a heavy heart, but like instead I am signaling the end of an era for us with more joy than I've ever had for my next era of what we're doing, because these creators saw the same magic I saw. They saw the same values that I saw, and they said, there's a way to extrapolate on that. There's a way to grow that. You know, I sent TK a meme that KEVO sent me. My favorite Batman villain is actually the Riddler. I'm uncomfortably attracted to him, and it's weird, but I love the Riddler. One of the things this meme pointed out is that for many people, the first idea that the Riddler could be a good guy was the Arkham games. All he did was hide some question marks around your map. He didn't go out of his way to torture Batman because he couldn't if he was also the thing putting the question marks there. So Riddler just kind of wound up being the guy that helped Batman solve the case. That's crazy. And I am not here to redeem all of your villains. I'm here to find the things that make some villains redeemable. That's Riddler. I'm not here to tell you that, as you've pointed out, TK, you know, Batman and Wolverine, they're both edgy with pointy cowls, so they should be ready to fight. I'm here to explore the things like, instead, let's remove that identity and let's compare Nightwing to Laura. And that's so much more important when we're talking about academia, because we're talking about the children of essentially billionaires. I'm sorry, if you don't think that Wolverine is a billionaire, you have missed the last 60 years of comics. And yeah, I am so glad to sign off of this era with you and sign into a new era, because what we're talking about is so much more tantamount to what comics are becoming than what we've talked about previously, that I'm sure that when we kick things up with X-Men 98, it's gonna be great. It is going to literally be great in a way, having already read ahead, that this started out chunky and wound up so smooth.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
That's it. That's all you have to say about 42 episodes. Come on. I mean, like, legitimately, My So-Called Life is 19 episodes. You have to have more to say about 42 episodes. You are the Winnie Holtzman of this. Come on. Right, Wicked.
I do have a lot to say about the 19 episodes of My So-Called Life. Have you seen this new show that Claire Danes is on that is popping up all over the place?
Hold on, Kevo, pop up. Kevo. So we just started My So-Called Life because Kevo was like, I'm going to watch My So-Called Life before I'm 40. And I'm like, sure, let's do it. So we're on episode 6. Let me just say, it watches better than I remember. It watches worse than I remember.
Yeah.
Because I now think Patty is incredibly reasonable. And I now think Rayanne Graff is a scum-sucking piece of shit. And so, like, and I've never felt that way. It was always diametrically opposed. And he's like, no, Patty's self-involved. And I'm like, no. Kevo, please come in on the 19 episodes of My So-Called Life right now at the end of Batman Deadpool.
She mostly just needs to be medicated. And Rayanne is not scum-sucking. But it's really fascinating, and I'm glad to be watching this now before I turn 40. I'm showing Jonah Buffy, and I did the math this week when we were watching Band Candy and realized that I'm Joyce's age. So it is really interesting to be watching these things as an adult. And, when you're a kid, you think Rayanne Graff is just cool. But you can also see where she is such a child in ways that you didn't understand as much when you were a kid. So it's really fascinating to watch these things.
She does sort of watch like somebody with a walker falling down a flight of stairs. You're like, oh no, you shouldn't go there, girl. Don't go there, girl. No! Clunk, 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 clunk. It is unfortunate.
We passed an ad for her new show, but I did not see what it was about.
The Beast in Me, I think it's called.
And I would like to point out, not AJ Langer's new show, because she's royalty now, and she can't be bothered with acting.
No, sir. One of them's dead, right?
Well, it's like, someone's dead. But I Kevo is shaking his head. No one
Wait, how far are you guys from the Juliana Hatfield Christmas episode?
9 episodes.
Cool. It's a great one. Can't wait.
He has heard nothing but stories about it.
I'm surprised by how much I don't know.
Oh, yeah. You didn't know there was a school shooting episode where they shot a bottle of soda. You had whole secrets waiting for you.
Okay, let's sign off on these beautiful comic characters, and then we can start our My So-Called Life podcast.
Well, until we start My So-Called podcast, Kevo, you're here right now. Let's get your sign off. Not that you read these books, but you've been sitting in. Was there any character combination that made you super happy to hear about, and where can everybody find you?
An article about this actually came up in my news feed, so I was really glad to see that it's getting positive responses. I'm sorry that, they weren't all bangers, but I really love how positive you guys have been on the whole experience overall. And I really love the idea of these two companies coming together a little bit more. Something I keep talking about is portmanteaus. That's the next thing that we're going to start seeing. Not just remakes and reboots, but combinations of stuff. So here's hoping we start seeing some MCU DC movies by the 2030s. And you can talk to me about that on socials at KEVO Really. That's KEVO REALLY.
I love that. So grateful that you were here to say goodbye to this whole project with us. TK, I understand you want to go. You want to get away from me. I understand. You want to go back to your universe. You want to shunt me to the DC universe. That's fine. I've got the books of magic. I'm Tim Hunter, and I can't be stopped. But if this were my life during wartime, and it would be, an uneven run, sorry about it, I would be very sad to not say to you that there has never been an era of this show that we did together where I didn't feel like you made me a better fan of the things I thought I knew better. The thing that so many people forget is, as a teacher, you learn from your students as much as you learn from your books. And I've never felt like your teacher and you my student, but I have sometimes felt like, the Sherpa with a canary, and you're just following me into this mine. And we have tread some really exciting places together in this project, you know, getting to know Batman better, Superman better, getting to understand what the Teen Titans were to the X-Men in the 80s. There has been a wealth of exploration and of self-exploration, because like, what does Azrael mean when you're talking about Batman compared to Bruce Wayne? To you, a fan who grew up on the Burton and Schumacher movies, a fan who grew up understanding that there were things like Year One and Nightfall, and don't even get me started on how much I can't wait to talk about all of these incredible podcasts with you. Like chomping at the bit, I am a hungry, hungry horse, like Bruce Springsteen sang about. I would love to know your favorite thing we talked about, your favorite thing in these issues, and where we can find you.
Favorite thing we talked about today or in the history of all of this?
Favorite thing in the project of Amalgam, favorite thing in today, and where we can find you. Don't forget where we can find you. Everybody wants to like stalk you, so be ready to be stalked.
Yeah, sure they do. The favorite thing that we talked about overall, I mean, at the end of the day, it's probably JLA Avengers, just because it's the culmination of everything. Favorite thing that we talked about today, even though there is such a special place in my heart for Nightwing and Wolverine, I am going to give it to not even the story. I'm going to give it to Grant. My favorite thing we talked about today is Grant Morrison. I love Morrison so much, and I just I got to finish out New X-Men with Morrison, and then I didn't go over to DC with him. I did a little bit. I read Seven Soldiers, but I didn't do most of it. He was doing incredible work there, and I just wasn't reading it. I felt it was inaccessible to me at the time, and so I didn't read it. And so I've really been missing reading Morrison comics, and I haven't gotten to do a lot of it since I've been an adult. You know, most of it was The Invisibles when I was a teenager, and you know, some stuff when I was still in college. Not a lot after that. So
did I not bully you into reading Klaus last Christmas?
I read Klaus. I actually I kickstarted Klaus. I have it. But it's, I don't know. You know, this is different. And you know, like I read Luda, his book when it came, so I still follow him, but like I haven't read a big two by him in a very, very long time. And so it was just really, really special. If you want to talk to me about that, I will talk to you endlessly about it at TK Accidental. Nico, answer your own questions.
All right. Favorite thing we talked about in this whole project, I guess, yeah, is JLA Avengers. As a kid, it was like my book. And so as an adult, you know, it's still kind of my book. Favorite thing in this project was definitely Nightwing Wolverine. That really spoke to something in me that feels indebted to the people that came before me. And, you know, I think that's even why Dick and Laura have trouble being their own heroes, because they hold themselves to a standard that their fandom doesn't. And that's a complicated thing. You know, I don't ever think I'm going to hit whistle tone, but, you know, I still sing someday like it's nobody's business and I'm 1990 Mariah Carey. As far as what I hope to accomplish with you in the future, not that you asked, but I'm going to tell you, I'm really excited to take a look back at some classic X-Men stories and investigate what led to the Astonishing Era, because the Astonishing Era for both of us was a really big jumping back in point. And by starting in 1998 with the Children of the Atom arc, and then moving into Revolution, and then moving into New X-Men, we're going to be talking about the things that ultimately decided what the films would be and decided how our fandom would shape out. Not necessarily your and mine, but the course of comics as a whole. And that is one of the most exciting things to me. So definitely come back in December at xsforpodcast.com. You will get such an incredible opportunity to jump into X-Men comics like you've never done before. We're going to talk about 1998's X-Men. We're going to talk about Age of Apocalypse. We're going to talk about 2099. But every month, we are going to have a current comics discussion episode. I don't have a name for it, so I'm putting weird staccato in. you guys are going to have a great time with it. So definitely check out X's for Comics and X's for Podcast.com. It will fill you with joy. If you want to be filled with other things, you guys should check me out at NICO Action, NICOACTION, NICO Action Music, NICOACTION MUSIC. Please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe on all of these feeds. That's HTML, X's for Comics, X's for Podcast, X's for Show. Get all up on YouTube. Have a sexy time with us. But 3 things you guys really need to do for yourselves. Number 1, please stay safe. It is a crazy world out there, and we just want to make sure you guys come back to us next week. Number 2, please be brave, because who you are, that's what we care about. And evolve daily is number 3. Who you were yesterday, amazing. Who you are today, incredible. But who you are tomorrow, that's the journey we want to be on with you. So until you guys are part of the next Marvel DC crossover, and the amalgamation is us with you, we love you. We think you're incredible. We will see you soon.